my second year, I had no intention of, getting into the business at that time. Then I picked up a job with a company called First Leasing Company of India. Then my final placement was with ANZ Greenless. They were able to make me a relationship manager in the corporate banking division. I had this friend of mine who was in GE Capital. GE Capital just set up shop in India. I joined ICICI Lombard. My initial posting was in Bombay, which I said I will join in a few months. And then finally never went to Bombay, to be honest. I was supposed to be head of their bank assurance business. On day one, we started the business. In about 6 to 8 months' time, the business was tottering. Okay? And since it was based out of Bangalore, then I said, listen, why don't I get involved? Maybe I'll do 2-3 days a week as a consultant and then try and put it back on track. This business was called AutoSense. So health has been a recent passion for me for about a year and a half now. I have now come to this conclusion that while I've picked up a lot of knowledge around the health sector, I had no intention of, getting into the business, to be honest, right? At that time, I used to accompany him because he was not keeping great health. And then I would say, also, let me travel with him because it was quite a distance from our home to the factory. Some days I would go with him and sit there and then come back. It was nothing like what today modern day offices are, right? The factory was a small desk and 2 chairs on either side, a bunch of files on one side, a filing cabinet with a fan, on top, sweltering heat of Chennai. I'm just trying to paint this picture for you. So it is not a place that you desire to go and sit and spend the entire day. You not you have Swiggy or Zomato or anything. The only thing that you had to eat was what you carried from home. And that would be in a tiffin carrier or whatever as what we would call it. Right? So they would have that, then sit down, talk to people, then I would come back. But when he died, things changed, to be honest, right? I suddenly realized it was a running business. And there was suddenly a bank that needed to be handled because they had set up limits for us. Our entire working capital was hypothecated. The stocks were hypothecated to the bank. We had certain orders to be completed and delivered to customers. We had a government PSU as one of our customers. We had a private sector tier 1 as another customer. And in the meanwhile, my dad, knowing that he was not keeping good health, anyway decided to have an arrangement with some of his friends who were also in the same industrial estate, who were at that point in time getting into automatic vending machines for coffee and tea, hot vending. So I had made all these arrangements. And then he had told them that, listen, post that, I'll take it a little easy. I'll just be a consultant for you as far as cold vending is concerned. Okay. So he had initiated all these conversations. So when he died suddenly, I still had to ensure they were then, obviously my dad's friends were very genuine and sincere. They said, this is what we'd agreed. So we are happy to take over this on lease. No problem. But then I had still certain obligations to be completed, right? We had to supply some goods, collect monies and all that. So that's when my first brush with the commercial world started, right? I had to go to the bank and understand what this CC limit meant, cash credit limit, ye kya hai, right? And how do you make sense of this? So I sat with my dad's CA to understand a little bit. And then he would tell me that, start writing out all expenses in single entry. I didn't understand double entry, what it meant. And I would just write everything down and say, these are the expenses that we've incurred and all that. And then in about 3 to 4 months' time, we collected all receivables. I think we delivered on the outstanding order, got the lease agreement signed with my dad. And then I had to settle all the employees in the company, all of that. And they're also absorbed by people. So there was no problem there. Nobody lost their jobs. So all that was amicably done. The good thing was that he had tremendous goodwill. And therefore, a bunch of people came forward to help us out. Right from getting since he died intestate, which is without a will, getting the legal heir certificate done. And then, somebody, because it's part of the industrial estate, somebody came and told us this is what you need to do to transfer this to my mom's name, all of that. So all these things happened. I then understood what it means to be an entrepreneur because you actually have multiple relationships, right, with different people. And they all came in handy at this point in time. And I did that. And in the process...
How many years did you manage that business?
No, man. This was like about 4-5 months of transition, right?
Yeah, okay.
About 4-5 months of transition, which is when I first understood what is accounting. Right? What is a ledger? What is a journal entry? What's a ledger? Because my CA would tell me, keep this in this form. I never understood what double entry was. I never used to understand the logic of double entry. Why did you need a second entry, right? If I'm writing expenses, I write expenses in a column, right? If I write income in a column, right? And he said, no, I want this called a cash book and all of that. So that was interesting. Then I picked up a job with a company called First Leasing Company of India. Okay. Which was technically the first leasing company in India. Okay?
Right.
So,
Wow. That was an innovative name.
yeah, the no-brainer, actually.
Yes.
It was run by this maverick called Farooq Irani. Okay. I think I joined him in 92 or something like that.
So were you like first employee of the first leasing
I
company?
was not. First leasing was 20 years old by then. Okay. Yeah, it was Chennai based. Okay. So, and then I was reasonably good with numbers. In those days, we used to run these lease models and hire purchase models. Basically, we would do any equipment leases and all that. I was there for a very short period of. Then I started doing debt syndication. I would go on a scooter and go and meet clients, saying that, "Batao, let me."
And Shiva, when was this? Was this in early 90s? Is that right?
Yeah, 93.
Yes, Shiva. So, can you explain to us what is debt syndication? I actually don't understand debt syndication.
Debt syndication is a fancy term to do lease broking, basically. I'd go to a company and then say, listen, are you considering a financial lease? I will do the working for you and tell you what the cost of the lease is. Pre-tax, post-tax and all of that.
So, what's a financial lease? Like you want to rent something, like lease an apartment or lease a factory?
No, it's basically movable assets. Nothing which is immovable. Okay.
Okay, so like lease a computer?
Machinery, it could be machinery, it could be computers, it could be vehicles, whatever. These were the typical three categories where people would do leases. Then my final placement was with ANZ Grindlays. I was a placement head.
So ANZ Grindlays, you got that offer. The HR somehow poached you from there and you joined them.
I joined.
And what
I
happened?
joined them as a lateral hire. Right?
Right.
So they were willing to make me a relationship manager in the corporate banking division. I had another opportunity to join a company in Hong Kong, which I refused. And there was also the time on the personal side, I was seeing my wife. She was in Mica in those days. So I felt Bombay would be closer to Ahmedabad, and therefore, decisions got made like that if I joined Grindlays. But as luck would have it, after I accepted the offer, after I came back to Bangalore and was all ready to go to Bombay, they called me and said, you know what, urgently there is a problem in Chennai. Why don't you go to Chennai? Okay. So they changed my location of posting immediately. And then I joined Grindlays. I had other batchmates of mine who were also in Grindlays. There was a large batch that had taken that year. I think from Ahmedabad alone, we had about 8 or 9 people, if I'm not mistaken, who joined Grindlays. So we went through this training program for the first 2-3 weeks in their training center in Chennai. We did that. Then I started my role as a relationship manager in corporate bank. I didn't like it one bit, to be honest. It was all clerical work or nothing more. But had a lot of these trappings of being in a foreign bank, right? So all that was there. Never got too enthused by it. But then I had this friend of mine who was in GE Capital. GE Capital just set up shop in India about 2-3 years
So
ago.
was this the same, the countrywide guys, or was that?
What was consumer, right? This was GE Capital Services India, which was the holding company for GE Capital in India.
This is the one that became Checkis. Is that the one?
No, this didn't become Jekis. This is the first company that GE started was called Jexi, GE Capital Services India. It was a holding company for the consumer business, which was countrywide consumer financial, which was a joint venture of the HDFC at that time.
Right.
It was the same company that also did a GNU State Bank for credit cards. Okay, it's called the SBIG. And the only business that this holding company would do was commercial finance, which was basically corporate finance equivalent. Okay. So I got an opportunity to work with them. I joined them. So I got posted to Gurgaon. And they said, you know what, Six Sigma is very important. Quality is the way to go in GE. So you have to become a quality leader. So please get your black belt going. Okay, which means I have to do 3 projects. So I got down to doing that. What do I say? It was interesting.
So this was the Jack Welch days, right?
Jack Welch days. So quality, Six Sigma, they were all in the buzzwords in the company. So you have to be a quality leader to run a business, which I fell for it, and therefore I did my quality projects. I think the takeaway for me was that quality is more belief system, that you do things right. It's not about the measurements that they had, right? Because some of these measurements were a little arbitrary, to be honest, right? They would baseline it and say we're at 5 and then we move to 5.5. Yeah, heading towards 6. There's a little bit of the lack of validity in how they were doing it, but that is okay. But I guess some of it is par for the course. But I think the important takeaway for me was that, can you internalize that when you do something, can you do it right the first time and not indulge in rework, right? So what was called the first pass yield, I think it was a brilliant concept. So it makes you aware that when you're doing something, get it right the first time. I think that consciousness, was very valuable. I like the way they used to make their pitch decks, to be honest, right? I was coming from Greenlace, where you would write a credit memorandum which used to run to 30 pages, 35 pages. It was in Word. Here, the same thing for the same company, we had to do it in about 6 or 7 slides. So we had abstract, right? What was relevant, just say what we will track, why this should be done, what are the risks, how will we get out if there's a problem. So all crisp. So the power of abstraction and focus, I think GE definitely had. They were
from what I understood about the GE decks was they were like, they would police it that you cannot go above this and you cannot change the format. This is it. This is our structure of presenting. Is that correct?
Pretty much. So those guys were there, and then I was the only non-CTP co-founder in this new company called Orbity Consulting. Okay, so I came from a financial services background. I said, okay, it sounds interesting. Didn't think this through too much in those days, right? I was just keen on doing something that was more exciting. And I think that's been probably the continuing theme in all that I've done. So then I joined them. We raised capital, so I helped them do the capital raise. We did a bunch of good things. There were some issues that were not okay in what we did. There were some integrity issues with the founder. While we were technically part of the founding team, then we said we have nothing to do with this. 4 out of the 6 quit on the same day. I was one of them. And once I came out of that, then I think for 2-3 months I was at loose end figuring out what to do. Okay, which is when one of my former colleagues at GE Capital said, why don't you speak to this gentleman called Sandeep Bakshi? He is now taken over as the head of ICICI Lombard in Bombay. Okay. He was an ICICI Limited Delhi. And Sandeep said, he was traveling to Bangalore, that he would meet me here. So I met up with him. We had a good discussion for about an hour and a half. He was trying to convince me to join ICICI. To be honest, I wasn't too sure. I said, listen, you're a great guy. ICICI is a great name. The insurance is not a business that I'm really keen on because all that I know of insurance is that an agent comes and gives me one fat piece of paper, which is called a policy. Nobody opens it, nobody reads it. Right? It's for my car, whatever. I have this. I'm still not convinced. But he would keep telling me, if you're coming to Bombay, come and see me. I met him at least twice or thrice after that in Bombay. And every time I went there, to be honest, he would take time off and meet me and have coffee with me and said, what have you decided? Are you joining us or not? And then finally he told me that, hey, listen, I know you're not convinced about the category, but think of it as a management challenge. We're trying to get this business off the ground. Why did you come and be part of the team? To be honest, I was also evaluating a lot of options. I had one option with the BPO, which I wasn't convinced again. Early days of BPO in India. Then between that and ICICI, I chose ICICI. I joined ICICI Lombard. My initial posting was in Bombay, which I said I will join in a few months. And then finally never went to Bombay, to be honest. I was supposed to be head of their bank assurance business on day one. I did not take on that role. Subsequently, I stayed back in Bangalore and I created a new business for them, which was around structured products. Okay. And structured products was primarily driven by what we called as the liability insurance products category.
Okay.
It was your product liability, product recall, professional indemnity, errors and omissions programs for a whole host of industries. Then you had directors and officers liability insurance. So these were all balance sheet protection products for companies, which required that you had to go and meet the CFOs of companies, which I was comfortable doing. Right. So I took on this as a one-man team. I started in Bangalore and I grew the entire business from nothing to market leadership in 18 months' time. Now, when you look back, you'll say, listen, that was fantastic. I don't think it was fantastic beyond a point. I think it was a natural evolution, right? And I think we got certain things right. We were also lucky. I think that's the way I see it. It's very clear that, we would actually go after the most sophisticated customers in our universe. And if we're able to service their requirements, then selling to tier 2, tier 3 customers shouldn't be a challenge. So I built a team and I was very clear for the top 3 or 4 customers. I would be everything right from the peon to the business head, right? I would go service the client, I would meet the CFO, be it an Infosys or a TCS, and I would stitch the entire program for them. And they were, to be honest, they were very encouraging of my involvement in their business. And I built up, I think, competence as well as, I would say, trust, most importantly. That they could trust me with their confidential information, and then they would allow me to structure the entire program. So our business was on a roll, yeah. It was there's no worries at all. But our entire category was small, right? Our entire category was about 500 crores, 600 crores in those days. And we were 22% of the market. My view is that you can grow, but as you keep growing beyond the top quartile, you might pick up not so good.
So you got your money back. What did you do with the money or in your career?
Then what I did was I said, listen, let me do a lot of consulting work. I think I've got some varied experience. I said I'll work with a few companies, advise them, and if required, I'll do some fundraising for them, be it debt or equity. Okay?
Right.
So I started doing a lot of those kind of engagements. See, fundamentally, I believed at that point in time, Middle India needed help. SMEs are a huge opportunity. And I was very, very bullish about MSME as a sector at that time. I said the top companies will figure out life. They know how to go and raise money if required, and they have got access to the bulge bracket investment banks in any case.
Yes.
Can you not be the bank that, helps out MSMEs in this space, right? So, but I was very clear that I did not want to run it at scale. I want to understand the client's business well, which meant that if there's a consulting gig, I will do the consulting gig and then do a transaction. So I have done M&As for industrial companies. I have done fundraisers for IT services companies. I have done consulting engagements with IT companies. In fact, interesting engagements, which I had no past background in. But I would go and pitch this and tell them that, listen, I think you should do this. And therefore, I did one performance aligned system for a large IT services company. I had no background in this, but I somehow felt that intuitively, I think, how do we set goals at each level that dovetail into the superior's goals and therefore into the company's goals? It was just that system, right? So I did that piece. Then I told the same company that, you know what, you get carried away because you're growing fast. People show you deals to acquire and all that. Are you really ready to do an M&A? M&A preparedness study is another project I did. I said, no, let me go and talk to everybody in your system. Different business areas, different units, understand what their burning issues are. Do they really have any bandwidth to absorb or digest another unit if it comes by, right? And will they be successful in doing it and all that? So in fact, my submission to them was, I guess, guys, you're growing at 40%, but I don't think you guys can actually digest even a small acquisition.
Yes. Yes.
You will probably muck it up. So go slow on this till you build capability. How you will go about integrating a new business that you acquire. You don't have a plan today, now do you have the bandwidth. Or you go ahead and set up a team if required and then learn the ropes and be comfortable that when something happens, you can lay the pipes for integration better internally. Right? So did that work, then did some fundraisers for people. Then for a brief while was toying with the idea of doing something in solar. So ran some financial models around solar thermal specifically, not just solar PV. But it was also a time when the entire crisis in the Indian economy was brewing, right? Infrastructure was going through a very bad phase at that time.
So this was 2011-12, is that?
11-12, correct, 11-12.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So the beginning of the problem, if you ask me, 11-12. Wherein consulting plus investment banking business, right? Did a few transactions. Then I was doing one large transaction in the auto component space for somebody. And then parallelly, I also raised capital for a digital marketing services company, which was into customer analytics and campaign management and customer experience. As part of the fundraise, I think the promoter group said, why don't you join the board of the company? So I said, sure, because I also knew the capital provider, who was a batchmate of mine. And he was also okay with that, saying that, listen, somebody like you would help because you're known to both sides. And I did that. As a part of that, what happened was we were supposed to do a joint venture with the TVS group in Chennai to build auto-focused CRM and analytics business. All right. So I got the entire JV agreement going. It was actually getting stalled for a bit. I got it consummated, and then we started the business. In about 6 to 8 months' time, the business was tottering. Okay, and since it was based out of Bangalore, then I said, listen, why don't I get involved? Maybe I'll do 2-3 days a week as a consultant, and then try and put it back on track.
Sorry, what was the name of the business?
This business was called AutoSense.
AutoSense, okay. So again, back to your auto roots.
Little bit of auto roots, yeah, correct. And then AutoSense was a services business focused on serving Indian OEMs at that point in time. And I got in, and it kind of sucked me into the business, to be honest, right? And I initially thought I'd spend 2 or 3 days a week, but that didn't stop at 2-3 days. It was close to where I was living. Therefore, I would just walk across in the morning at 8 o'clock and come back only at 8, 9 in the night. So it was an intense 3 years that I had there. But I was very happy with what we achieved, right? We had a customer who was unprofitable again. So it was very clear that we will let go of that business. So we shrank our revenues by 25% in year 1 after I came in, which is basically the second year for the company, and shut down one facility and said we will grow again after we get our focus back. And this time I said that, listen, we will not do services in India. B2B in India is a mug's game, to be honest. Okay, you don't make money, and the customer will perennially be dissatisfied because you use it as a negotiating tactic when it comes to a price discussion all the time. Then he said we'll develop a few products which are relevant and operate it like a managed service. So we built a product around the roadside assistance space. Okay, so it was an incident management software, and we would offer that coupled with our call center operations as a managed service for RSA providers. We used to work with the largest RSA providers in India. That was one. Then we built a loyalty platform for OEMs wanting to build them, roll out the loyalty programs. We are running one large loyalty program for an OEM in any case, for a two-wheeler OEM. Then we also built what we call the connected demand stack for automotive, which is what we presented to NASSCOM, because of which we got awarded as one of the emerged 50 companies in NASSCOM. So fundamentally, from being a services company, we moved away into big products, and then we said we'll build a platform. Okay, and that gave us a lot of credits in the market for a small company like that, right? To be noticed by, say, an M&M, for example, at that time, where we're up against competition against, say, Accenture and Bosch. So they picked us over the other two to build their, I would say, multi-segment IoT platform. When I say multi-segment, it was both for their farm division and their trucks and buses division. So the entire platform which ingests data from the CAN bus of the vehicle, you build a data lake, you build cloud-based architecture, and then provision the entire thing through microservices, downstream then through microservices, was done by us. Then I came out, then I did a consulting gig with a large B2B e-commerce company on their value-added services side, which was into, B2B e-commerce in the distribution space, right? Food and grocery was Udaan, yeah. So okay. I did work.
So you were working with Udaan?
No, I was a consultant. I was helping them.
As a consultant? Okay.
As a consultant. I was working on a specific project on their value-added services side. How do we build retention amongst their retailers whom they are servicing, right? Because the churn was high. So it's not about always providing quantity discounts and all of that, but how do you ensure you build a relationship? And what could be the various points which you could enable, which will drive those relationships, which will drive relationship building and therefore drive loyalty. I think that was the subject. So I did a project with them for about, 6 to 8 months. Then I moved on to another company called Zenoti, which is a B2B SaaS company, which is one of the unicorns. but they are into the salon and spa space in the US predominantly, right? Fundamentally a CRM system, which is basically an appointment management system. Finally, they deliver the customer to the payments piece, right? So I was effectively as a consultant looking after the payments business. Okay.
So your angle as a consultant here for both of these companies was payments, and because you brought that knowledge base doing payments, is that right? Or was it something more?
It was not payments. With Udar, it was more about business strategy and the fact that I had worked on, I would say, membership and loyalty programs before. Okay, so therefore, what can one build to ensure there is better retention and loyalty? With Zenoti, I think the problem statement was, listen, how do we reimagine this entire payments business that we have? Should we start launching a few embedded products, which could be on the lending side, to different constituents in the salon spa ecosystem? For example, can you do something with a stylist in terms of leverage access? Can we provide them with that? Can we also look at providing loans to the salons and spas? Is it even feasible to begin with? Or are they well serviced already by other people? And how can we ensure that the entire payments pipe is also optimized in terms of margins without compromising service delivery as far as clients are concerned?
So Shiva, if I understand, so you've been doing this consulting and advisory work. Is that what you're still doing, or post-COVID did you stop?
After these two engagements is when I got into health. So health has been a recent passion for me, right? For about a year and a half now, right? And I have now come to this conclusion that while I've picked up a lot of knowledge around the health sector, I think it's going to be very difficult for me to get this health insurance company off the ground, given the fact that, there is not much of appetite in terms of risk taking amongst the PE folks today. All right. The PE folks obviously will tell me that, listen, get me a proof of concept and then we will come in at a later stage. But for me to get it off the ground, if you're not a licensed entity, it becomes very difficult to play this game. I even tried the OTT route.
Give me a 2-minute pitch. What are you actually trying to do? What does your company or your startup, what are you trying to do? What problem are you solving?
What you're trying to do and what we might end up doing. Two things. Right. We are trying to actually disrupt the group insurance space and move the entire thing into individual health insurance, because I think that is our fundamental belief. Right? But for that, we need to get a product off the ground. And to have the product, you need to have a license. If you don't have a license, you go and tie up with somebody. Right? The tie-up with somebody is happening at a very, very slow pace. When there's interest, there is no will to close it. Also because of their own problems that they have in their business. Whenever something becomes center of plate, then it gets pushed to the back burner. That's what I've been noticing for the last 6-8 months. So in my head, even if we go ahead and sign something with somebody, I think we might not progress, because I think I'm not too sure of what the ride is going to be post that. What I'm currently thinking of is that, listen, healthcare financing seems to be a big space. Should we pivot to doing that, which is basically premium financing? If somebody wants to buy insurance for the longer term, can we get them to can we offer them a financing solution at that point? 2, is there an opportunity to actually do claims financing? Because the biggest pain point people have is at the time of discharge. After you're getting discharged, if you wait for the insurance to settle the claim, it takes 3 hours, 4 hours. At that time, you're as it is fatigued. And then if you're able to just tell the hospital that, or this one saying that, listen, here is my payment system, let me swipe and get out. Let us settle this later when we have the time. I think that's a huge benefit. There are some barriers to doing it, but we still think there's an opportunity there.